Hello everybody, welcome back to Whiskey Taste Buds YouTube channel. We're here for episode 3 of What is Canadian Whiskey. The first 2 episodes, if you guys haven't watched it already, go down and look at those ones if you want. And we're talking about what is Canadian whiskey. We started on the west coast on Vancouver Island and did a couple of whiskeys from Vancouver Island, and now we're heading to mainland BC.
For at least one.
For at least one, yeah.
Rather than 2.
Yeah, we spent a little bit of time trying to find some mainland craft whiskeys here on the Sunshine Coast and on Vancouver Island, and it was not an easy task to do so. So the whiskey that we're presenting today, we're only doing one, mainly because I couldn't find anything else. But the whiskey we're doing today is Odd Society Burns Bog, and that is a Canadian smoked malt whiskey.
Burns Bog. I remember
Burns
Bog growing up, Lower Mainland.
Yeah. So this whiskey, it's a single malt whiskey that's been produced. Odd Society Distillery is a craft distillery in East Vancouver, and the distiller there is Gord Glans. And he's from, he did his master's of distilling at Heriot-Watt University in Edinburgh.
Yeah. Seems like they're producing a lot of distillers throughout Scotland and also North America.
Absolutely, yeah. And for those of you who don't know, Burns Bog is a bog, it's a peat bog that's located in the Fraser River Delta in the Lower Mainland. And it's about 8,000 acres.
They consider it the largest peat bog on the west coast of North America. That's how big it is. And in Scotland, you have what they often refer to as blanket bogs and fens. Now, blanket bog is really very much like Burns Bog in that it relies mainly on rainfall and very little evaporation. Whereas fens are those that are in a basin or a valley, and you find those mainly in places like Islay, whereas the other ones would be Aberdeenshire and Speyside and Orkneys.
Yeah, so Burns Bog is a very famous bog in BC here in Vancouver, very well known. It's also very urban. It's one of I think it's the largest undeveloped urban land area in North America, at least. But it's pretty cool that they have that right there in the Fraser Valley or in the Lower Mainland. And this whiskey is bottled at 46% ABV, and they took peat from the bog, which is not an easy task because it's kind of protected. And so they have a conservation society that they worked with and took some peat, and they smoked the barley with the peat from Burns Bog.
Noting that the peat that they did use is from what they call a disturbed part of the bog, which is, I think they're putting a road in or something like that. So it wasn't, for the conservationists, they did it right, and we'll test out as to how well the peat kind of features in the whiskey itself.
So there it is in the glass. Fairly light color, like a light golden color.
I have a term for that, but I'm not going to use it. It's so light.
On the nose, it's not super smoky, but there's a very earthy peatiness on the nose.
It reminds me of rubber bands, the elastic ones that you used to chew and sniff.
Yeah, for me it's like almost like dried moss or dried peat.
You're right.
Very earthy.
I took the sip. I'm sorry. I went
I'll catch up.
I advanced too quickly. I was too curious as to what it was that made me think of rubber bands. But I can see.
Yeah, so on the palate, again, the super light spirit, very approachable, easy drinking.
Little veggie.
Yeah, vegetal. Yeah.
little bit of wood. It's like eating turnips with a wooden spoon.
Yeah, good call. Yeah, I would agree. hmm And there is a bit of a light smoke on the
Yeah.
palate as well.
I
And
just
it
picked that up.
carries into the finish.
Yeah.
The finish is very light as well, but it's and delicate, I would say, but it lingers. I would say it's a long finish.
Yeah, and it's for me, it's a long finish that invites you back to want to try more.
Yeah, it's kind of like dry oak, like a drying
Mm-hmm.
dryness on the finish too, which makes you want to drink more. But
Maybe we should withhold on that one. No, it's been
But
good.
yeah, all in all, it's really cool whiskey to try. It's I always enjoy trying different versions of what a peated whiskey is in craft distilling and stuff like that. They have different unique ways of doing it. And when I heard about peat from Burns Bog, I thought I got to try this. So picked one up.
I presume that they sent the peat up to the malting site in Armstrong. Not sure what type of barley they used, or even a description of the.
Yeah, I
process
don't
of
know. I
tilling.
know Mr. Glanz at Odd Society. He is known for his experiments and
Yes.
and ingenuity. So maybe it's something they did in house
Yeah.
after they got the barley, like malted, or maybe it was during the malting process. I'm not 100% sure on that.
For those of you that are interested in visiting the distillery, it's in East Vancouver on Powell Street.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, they have a
definitely should be
they have a
worth
really
visit.
interesting motley crew, and they have some really cool spirits, not just whiskeys, but gins and other.
With
Another
cool
interesting
names
things.
like Wallflower Gin and Prospector Rye, which has actually been receiving some awards, I'm told.
Yep.
But the one that I mentioned to you earlier, which is one I'm curious about, is called Mongrel, and it's unaged rye spirit. So it's not even a whiskey, I don't suspect, and they describe it as raw and untamed. So.
So it would be a really interesting one to sort of get an idea of the spirit that comes off their stills, because it hasn't touched wood yet, it hasn't been aged in any oak or anything like that. So I always find that super fascinating when I have a chance to try a new make spirit from a distillery, because that gives you the character of everything that happens up to the aging process.
No, we're going to assume that it's unaged spirit. There's not much of a description that I've picked up on as to whether it's just less than 3 years, hence the reason why it's a new.
Very well, maybe it has been some time, because just not 3 years.
Maybe 3 years.
So yeah, that's our one whiskey for the day. Again, I mentioned earlier, it's tough to find BC Craft whiskeys on the shelves these days, and it's something that's a bit of a point of contention here in BC. Craft distillers face huge markups if they want to get their whiskeys on BC liquor store shelves, and it's not fair. A lot of people believe there's a movement. There's a lot of people that believe that they should be treated much like the BC wine industry and give these BC craft distillers a leg up to try and get their product out there. Excuse me. Whereas BC wines, they get actually tax benefits and stuff like that to help them be successful. And they're also, BC craft distillers are also sort of capped at a certain amount of whiskey they can produce before they're not considered, they can't fall under that craft distillery designation anymore. And so there is a movement in the news that maybe you guys have heard about or not, but there's a movement to try and change those things, and I think that would be huge for BC craft distillers if they made those decisions, and I don't see why they should.
No, but if they're going to remove trade barriers across the country, clearly they should be also removing trade barriers between craft distillers and our government liquor stores as well.
Yeah, it's really hard. It's really hard to start up a distillery without those barriers and hurdles to jump over, let alone have to deal with all that as well. And there's a lot of really good distilleries that have recently closed because of that, and that's sad.
Mm-hmm.
But we're gonna try and get our hands on a couple more BC distilleries for you guys. But we're also probably gonna move east and
Across the country.
and hopefully feature some Alberta whiskeys and maybe one from the Yukon.
And if any of you have some whiskeys that you would like us to try, send us a note. Love to see it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And see where we go from there.
Yeah, hope you guys are enjoying this series.
Mm-hmm.
Don't forget to subscribe,
Mm-hmm.
and we'll see you next time. Sláinte.
Sláinte.